Make new friends but keep the old. These lines were written by a Welsh composer in the 19th century, but they still make sense, not just in personal relations, even in geopolitics. Case in point, the United States and Pakistan. Pakistan's cabinet has reportedly approved a key security pact with Washington. It is called CISMOA, Communication, Interoperability and Security Memorandum of Agreement. I know it's a mouthful. This pact is not new though. It was signed between Pakistan and the United States in the year 2005. Its validity was for 15 years. So in 2020, the pact expired. Almost 3 years later, a new one has been approved, and this too is set to run for 15 years. But why is it important? Because the US does not sign such agreements with every country. This pact is reserved for allies and defense partners. If you sign this deal with America, it's easier to buy weapons and hardware. So the obvious question is this. Is the US planning to sell weapons to Pakistan? And if they are, it is a risky move. Last year, the Pentagon approved an F-16 package for Pakistan. It was worth around $450 million. India was not impressed. We know Joe Biden has invested a lot in his relationship with India, but selling more hardware will raise alarm in New Delhi. Will Biden risk that? Most experts say he won't. But the way this deal was handled is fishy. We have seen no official statement from either side. But American and Pakistani sources have confirmed this news to multiple agencies. So why the secrecy? Are they trying to downplay it? Or is there something more at play? I'm afraid we'll have to wait and see. The US and Pakistan have a long history of defense sales. In 2006, they signed deals worth $3.5 billion. Pakistan was America's biggest customer that year. Their arsenal is filled with American hardware, from F-16 fighter jets to howitzers to attack helicopters. But in the last few years, a new seller has emerged, and that seller is China. From 2017 to 2021, China made up 72% of Pakistan's demand. Just one problem though, the products are substandard. Pakistan's army has been complaining about China's hardware. The F-16s are still their frontline jets. To repair and refurbish them, Pakistan needs American support. But how should India see this move? Repairing F-16s will not worry New Delhi. It doesn't really alter the power balance in the region. India's military remains far superior. But what if it goes beyond that? What if Washington sells new weapons and hardware to Pakistan? That would be worrying. The US hasn't said anything about selling new weapons, but they have talked about Shehbaz Sharif's recent offer. The Pakistan Prime Minister claims he's willing to talk with India. The US says we support this idea.
As we have long said, we support direct dialogue between India and Pakistan on issues of concern. That has long been our position.
So what exactly is happening between Pakistan and the Americans? It's a very strange equation. After 9/11, Washington needed Pakistan's help in Afghanistan, hence all the weapons and funds. But now that's not the case. Pakistan has little strategic value to the US. In comparison, India's stock has increased. So Joe Biden has largely ignored Pakistan. No high-level visits, no political engagements, not much trade either. Washington considered Pakistan a lost cause. But throughout this period, one thing has not changed, and that is the military relationship. In February, rumors spread that Army Chief Asim Munir was in the US. The Army denied it, the Army of Pakistan. Then last month, he hosted a top American general, Eric Kurilla, who heads the US Central Command. And now you have this defense pact. Pakistan is like a bad habit the Americans can't ignore. The question is why? It's not about countering China, because let's face it, that ship sailed years ago. Pakistan today is effectively a Chinese vassal. Many experts say it's because of the nuclear weapons. That's why the Americans are still in this game. The US fears Pakistan's nukes may fall into the wrong hands. Biden talked about this last year. He called Pakistan one of the most dangerous countries in the world. He said their nukes have no cohesion. Could that explain America's military cooperation? Well, maybe, but it is still a risky game. You cannot expect India to ignore continued military cooperation with Pakistan. There will be a red line. It's about where India will draw that line. And we're not done with Pakistan on this show. We also want to talk about CPEC tonight, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. It's like that startup which wanted to become a unicorn. There was big money driving it. Its valuation skyrocketed. But thanks to poor management, everything fell apart. Now, the main investor is unhappy, and there are fears that the project might go bust. This story is about how Pakistan is trying to save CPEC. Let's begin with some recent events. Last month, Pakistan celebrated a birthday. CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, had turned 10. They had a cake-cutting ceremony, not making this up. This is what Pakistan did. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif was there, along with China's ambassador in Islamabad. They held a ceremony and they cut a cake. A few weeks later, China's vice premier flew to Islamabad. There was another ceremony. Some new projects were launched. The vice premier had a message from Xi Jinping. It was a congratulatory letter. It tried to paint CPEC as a win. Xi Jinping said CPEC is a vivid testament to China's all-weather friendship with Pakistan. The Chinese president promised to keep supporting CPEC. But the festivities did not last long. Just days after the celebrations, Pakistan began looking for more investors. It is looking for new partners who can put money in CPEC. And one of the candidates on their shortlist is Turkey. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has made a new pitch. He has offered a trilateral arrangement, China, Pakistan, Turkey. But why bring in Turkey? In the hope of bringing in more money. This is what Shehbaz Sharif said, and I'm quoting, "I think all three nations can benefit from the potential of the CPEC, which has been a big success." Well, this is a bit of an exaggeration, and this is not a new pitch. Last year, Sharif was in Istanbul. He met the Turkish president and made the same offer. Sharif also told Erdogan that if Turkey is willing to invest, he will be, quote-unquote, happy to take this up with the Chinese leadership. Almost a year has passed. Ankara has not committed yet. But that's not stopping the Pakistanis from trying. From Imran Khan to Shehbaz Sharif, every Pakistani leader has played salesman for CPEC. They've tried to sell the expansion, to turn CPEC into something bigger than just a bilateral project. In this effort, Islamabad has reached out to many countries. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, Afghanistan, even the United States of America talk about being ambitious. Pakistan has tried its luck, but has not made much progress. When Imran Khan was Prime Minister, he hosted the Saudi Crown Prince. He even chauffeured him around. You may remember these pictures. They're from 2019. Imran Khan driving MBS around Pakistan. He wasn't doing it to show off his driving skills. Imran Khan wanted investments. And he did manage to get something. The Saudi Crown Prince promised an oil refinery, a $10 billion project to be built in Gwadar. It was supposed to be a part of CPEC, but the project did not take off. And the reason was China. Pakistan wanted the refinery as part of CPEC. China did not want it. They did not allow it. So for 4 years, the deal was in cold storage. But recently, there was some movement. This $10 billion deal was revived. But the terms were changed. The refinery is no longer a part of CPEC. It's the same story with other projects too. Lots of promises, but little to show for them. And no third partner. We come to the question, why does Pakistan need one? Why do they need a third partner? Because the project has become too big to sustain. And Beijing is not keeping its promises. When Pakistan and China started CPEC, the investment target was $62 billion. That's the number that Beijing promised, $62 billion of investment in Pakistan. How much of that has materialized? Less than $28 billion. That's according to one estimate. What about the rest of the money? Well, it seems China has had a rethink. It has slowed down investments. As of last year, just 3 out of 15 CPEC projects were completed. China wants to see progress. It wants the existing investments to be completed and to bear fruit. Only then will it pour in more money, which makes sense. Which is also why Pakistan wants money from another source to jumpstart stalled projects. Also to reduce some of the financial liability. But that's not a decision that Pakistan can take. China controls every aspect of CPEC. All investments are subject to Beijing's approval. So even if a partner is interested, they cannot get in without Beijing's nod. And that leaves Pakistan completely at China's mercy. 10 years into CPEC, this is what they have. About $23 billion in Chinese debt and a bloated infrastructure project with no progress and no takers. Thankfully, no such restrictions in India yet. India is still in the midst of a digital boom. India has some of the world's most affordable internet plans, and there is a growing demand for devices, for laptops and tablets of all sizes. But New Delhi has issued a new order today, and it may have a bearing on your next purchase. India has imposed an import restriction on devices like laptops. Companies that sell these gadgets will have to get a license to import. To some, it may hark back to the infamous license Raj. Our next report tells you what this move is all about.
If you've ever tried to buy a laptop, your search for the perfect device might follow a series of predictable steps. You probably begin with a Google search and type in words like best laptops under 50,000. The gurus at Google throw up a long list of names. There are photographs and a long list of specs filled with tech jargon that honestly even an Oxford dictionary cannot explain. Once you have spent enough time perusing all the advice online, the entire product catalogue is a blur. The configurations don't make sense anymore. What you're left with are just names like HP, Dell, Samsung, and Apple. Your choice probably hinges on the brand. Have you ever wondered why there are no Indian names among the top brands? Probably because there are not enough laptops made in India. That's true for personal computers and tablets too. India wants to fix that problem. It has come up with new rules, a new licensing requirement for companies to follow. Until now, such devices could have been imported freely. There were no requirements as such. But that's about to change. Now, manufacturers would need a license to get their products to India. Why make the process harder? The intention is to get these companies to make in India. That isn't really happening right now. From April to June this year, almost $20 billion worth of electronics were imported to India. This includes laptops, tablets, and personal computers. These devices make up almost 1.5% of India's total imports in a year. Nearly half of this supply comes from China right now. New Delhi wants to change that. There are now incentives on offer. Earlier this year, India announced a $2.1 billion scheme. How does it work? If the manufacturers make in India and exceed an annual target, they'll be entitled to a cashback on the goods that leave the factory. There will be a ripple effect on the economy too. New Delhi expects the scheme will generate about 200,000 jobs. 75,000 will be direct, the rest will be indirect. Why make such a push now? India is trying to capitalize on its past success. Earlier, New Delhi had introduced a similar production scheme for smartphones. Tech giants like Apple capitalized on them. 7% of all iPhones produced in the world now carry the Made in India tag. New Delhi wants to capitalize on this success. The goal is ambitious, but there are apprehensions. Industry officials say the new license requirement might affect their ability to offer new products quickly. Indians may need to wait longer to get their hands on new models after launch. Further, the new requirement might dampen the festive spirit. The restrictions come just before the festive season, the time when companies plan attractive offers to woo buyers. They'll now need to come up with a new plan, probably one that might need to manufacture in India.
Earlier we spoke about setting the limit, about drawing red lines. Well, China has drawn another one. It cuts right through the middle of civil liberties and choice. Let me explain. China's cyber regulator has come out with some suggestions. They're telling teens how to use smartphones. If you're aged between 16 and 18, you can use a smartphone for 2 hours a day. Between 8 and 16, 1 hour a day, and below 8, just 8 minutes. I'll repeat that. Just 8 minutes of screen time if you're below 8 years of age in China. There are internet curbs too. No mobile internet from 10 p.m. at night to 6 a.m., obviously in the morning. On paper, this is supposed to be a choice. Parents may or may not enforce it. They say it's a choice, but we all know how choice works in China. So tech companies are feeling the heat already. Their shares plunged on Wednesday and Thursday. Alibaba was down more than 2%, Tencent almost 0.5% down. The question is, why is China doing this? Because children are spending too much time on their phones. Eye problems are on the rise, so is internet and phone addiction. So what does Beijing do? Impose hard limits on how much they can use it. Beijing has done this before. In 2021, remember, they curbed online gaming. They said teen gamers can only play for 3 hours a week. But do these hard limits really work? We'll answer that question. But first, let's understand the problem. Screen time is a major issue among teenagers. Doctors say the ideal limit is 2 hours a day. And how much time do teens actually spend? a lot more than 2 hours. In the US, around 7.5 hours per day. In India, around 7.3 hours every day. That's the kind of screen time they have. More than 60% of Indian children have more than 2 hours of screen time. This leads to all kinds of problems, like irregular sleep, mood swings, excessive snacking, and fatigue. So the bottom line is this: it is not desirable. Children should not be spending 7 hours on the phone in a day. And it's not like they're watching quality content. Most often it's games or reels. So China's objective is good. But what about their method? Do other countries have similar strategies? Very few of them do. For example, Taiwan does. Parents there are legally obliged to limit teenage screen time. No hard limits though. It just says, quote unquote, not beyond a reasonable time. And if parents ignore this, they can be fined. How much? Up to $1,600. That should be enough incentive, I guess. Taiwan has also banned gadgets for children below 2 years of age. It's illegal to use them. South Korea is another example. They have limited children's access to online games. Between midnight and 6 a.m., children cannot play online. But do these curbs work? For starters, imposing them is a nightmare. More than 20% of China's population is under the age of 18. How do you regulate all of them? Ask parents to take away their phones? Or tweak the software to limit screen time? Neither method is ideal. Tech companies say it's nearly impossible. Parents and children will always find loopholes. But that's just one part of the problem. The second is the concept of it. Should governments be asking children what and how much to watch? It's a slippery slope. By that logic, shouldn't cigarettes and alcohols also be banned? Banning or curbing isn't always the answer. In fact, it can be counterproductive. Children may grow to resent their parents or consider themselves untrustworthy of devices. You don't want that happening. A better solution would be parent-driven. Parents know what is best for their kids. What they need is good advice and plans, not legally enforceable ones, just good old tips. After that, it's all about your creativity. And I know it's hard to make children listen. But that applies to everything really, not just screen time. It's not like children love eating green vegetables or finish homework on time or sleep when you ask them to. You need to figure out a way to make them do these things. And screen time is no different. The state's job is not to interfere in parenting. The state's job is to tell parents what is desirable and leave it at that. Our next story is about news itself. We live in a world where everything, including water, is paid for, yet news continues to be free. Just think about it. You probably see multiple news videos on Twitter or Instagram. How much do you pay for that? Nothing. But those videos are making money for the platform. They're increasing traffic, selling ads, and creating profits. How much of that do news companies get? Again, nothing. Twitter does not pay us for news. Neither does Meta. But recently, there has been a pushback. We are focusing on two cases tonight. The first is from Canada. Their government has passed a new law. It requires tech giants to negotiate deals with news agencies, basically pay them for their content. But have these companies agreed? Well, not all of them. Meta has decided to remove news content in Canada. They say we are not paying. And what's their excuse? Meta believes it's a question of who needs whom. They claim news companies use their platforms to increase visibility, to boost their bottom line. They also claim that users don't come to them for news. They come for other things, but end up seeing the news anyway. Is that true? Well, this claim brings us to the second case. A French news agency is suing Twitter. It's called AFP, Agence France Presse. It's basically a copyright case. AFP wants to know how much traffic is generated by their content. If they know this, they can demand payments accordingly. Just one problem though. Twitter won't tell them. Elon Musk has called the case bizarre. His argument is the same as Meta. He says news companies benefit from their presence on Twitter. People click on links, thus generating traffic. If that is the case, why not release the data? Why not show us the actual numbers? The truth is that this system helps both sides. Internet platforms get more traffic thanks to news. At the same time, news platforms get more reach thanks to Meta or Twitter. Both things are true. But only one side is making the money of it. Only one side is getting paid. Imagine you watch your favorite news show on Twitter or Instagram. You haven't bought their subscription on TV. You just watch them online. Who benefits in such cases? Twitter and Instagram get traffic every time you watch. And what about the news platform, the news channel or website? They get a viewer but no money. And this is highly unfair to news agencies and publications. Also look at who's bringing what to the table. Twitter is offering a platform, no content, no inputs, no information. It's creators and journalists who are putting content out, who are enriching these platforms. And in the process, the platforms get money. But the service does not. The system has to change, especially with media houses struggling to generate revenue. And it's not like it's impossible. Australia imposed a similar rule in 2021. At first, Meta and Google pulled the same stunt. They threatened to remove news from their platforms. But eventually, they backed down. Today, more than 30 deals have been signed. Put together, they have made $200 million for news companies. I know it sounds like a lot of money, but we are talking about internet giants here. Meta makes $120 billion in 1 year. Google, more than $280 billion. If anyone can afford it, they certainly can. More countries should consider doing what Australia and Canada have done. Last we checked, Meta hasn't gone bankrupt in Australia. Neither has Google. So the idea is financially feasible. Even India is thinking along these lines. In the month of January this year, the Information and Broadcasting Ministry gave a clear message. It said big tech must share revenue with news agencies. No laws have been introduced yet, but at least the intent is there. Going forward, we need to admit and accept two things. News and big tech cannot be separated. This relationship is here to stay. And secondly, this relationship leads to or has a revenue imbalance. Big tech is taking the bigger chunk of profits. We need laws to correct this problem. But we also need internet platforms to be more understanding. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with the United States. A robbery attempt went horribly wrong here. A masked man tried to steal from a grocery store, but the store owner caught hold of him and, well, went to town with a beating. In Michigan, a couple rescued people from a burning boat seconds before it exploded. In Turkey, the military detonated artillery shells found underwater off the Black Sea coast. And finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1960, the West African nation of Niger gained full independence from France. The French began colonizing Niger in the 1890s. It was not easy, though. People of all ethnicities united to resist and fight back. After 2 decades of intense fighting, Niger came under the French rule in 1922. It was one of the last African countries to be colonized by the Europeans. We're leaving you with that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Ain't nothing you can do, man, until police come in. Can I get a switch? Let me get a switch. Don't do that, man. Don't do that. Get off the boat.
Get off the boat.
It's gonna blow. You guys want to jump out right now?
Jump out right now.
Get away from me.
Get away